You're still struggling with who to start at quarterback or tight ends? Let's figure it out. Here are the guys that we want to start and sit. Let's do QB first and kick it off with the must starts. These guys are now in the elite tier, and I'm talking Jaden Daniels. That's right, not just real life, but for fantasy, that rushing upside. And if you did draft him in the mid rounds, you might have hit the jackpot here. Lamar Jackson proved why he's still a must start no matter what if you got him. What about Josh Allen? Yeah, I think there's probably no question if you got Josh Allen, you go with him. But man, after last week, you might have some doubts.
I think you definitely have to have some doubts. Plus, it's the Jets. I mean, you got to be worried about this receiving core right now, especially if Shakir misses again. But I'm with you. If I got Josh Allen, I'm rolling him out again. But I will say, another bad game, we might have to consider taking him out of this tier.
I think it would take a little more than that for me, but I understand because we do get some questions like, well, Josh Allen or Jaden Daniels. Now that question isn't so easy to answer, but look, you have Josh Allen here. Unless you have Jaden Daniels, I think you still have to start him. You might have the same concerns for Jalen Hurts. And of course, didn't play last week, but man, statistically has not been one of the best quarterbacks despite being either the first or second QB drafted almost everywhere in fantasy. But he is getting both his receivers back in week 6.
That's the thing. He's getting A.J. Brown. We should get A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith back. He still has that rushing upside. They still tush push near the goal line. I don't really have a good reason to bench Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, some people, again, short memories, you'll forget, oh, yeah, he hasn't had A.J. Brown since week 1, and Devontae Smith missed. And yeah, I have Jalen Hurts. I'm not sweating this. And Cleveland Browns defense definitely doesn't scare me away from him. All right, the next tier, the strong starts at quarterback. Hello, Baker Mayfield, still one of the top fantasy quarterbacks around. Dak Prescott proved why you don't worry too much about him. The Dallas Cowboys just throw it so much. He's got such a high floor. You got Dak, you're pretty good. Joe Burrow, I mean, do we even need to say anything after last week? Man, Higgins and Chase are proving to be elite and healthy. Kyler Murray, well, the passing yardage is underwhelming, but it doesn't matter when you can run like Kyler Murray. And that's why you still feel good with Kyler Murray. Do you still feel good with Jordan Love, which should have been a smash spot, and he didn't?
Should have been a smash spot, but he has another kind of smash spot this week too against the Cardinals. Now I know Brock Purdy didn't smash against the Cardinals, but I think Jordan Love is going to bounce back. He's going to get better here. I would still have trouble benching Jordan Love if he's my best option.
Yeah, exactly. Once we get down to the next group of quarterbacks, there's not a single one of them I would play over Jordan Love. Jordan Love's still QB1 for fantasy, regardless of matchup for me. And then CJ Stroud, I mean, kind of the same, still has that floor. The ceiling hasn't really been there, but here's the thing with Stroud is might be without number one receiver Nico Collins this week. And the Patriots, well, the matchup is just kind of okay.
Yeah, Stroud's been very underwhelming, but at the same time, he hasn't been terrible. It's not like he's killing you. I still feel like if I got Stroud, I'd pretty much just start him and take whatever I get.
My concern this week with Stroud potentially is just that it's not a high scoring game because the Patriots just run and shoot the clock and they won't force the Texans to pass. But at the same time, the Texans don't really have much of a run game either. Joe Mixon's still out. Who knows if he comes back? So Stroud is still at least a decent, I'd say low end QB1 this week. Now, these QBs, again, are right around there. Streaming options in a single quarterback league. If you stream maybe decent quarterbacks in a one quarterback league, let's start with Jared Goff. He's just kind of always that guy, right? Have some ups and downs, but you know what you're getting from him. And then Geno Smith, surprisingly, had been leading the league in passing, in yardage, and in attempts until they lost to the Giants somehow. But look, Geno is still solid for fantasy. I'd like to say Brock Purdy is solid for fantasy, but he was not solid in what should have been a smash spot last week. You feel like he's going to bounce back against Seattle.
I mean, I feel like he should, but I felt like he was going to have a big game last week. Again, it just feels like he's been underwhelming, right? He hasn't been bad, but he just hasn't been great either. So I guess the definition is solid.
I just kind of feel that's the 49ers as a whole this season, both offense and defense. It's kind of underwhelming. Decent, but man, they're underachieving. Brock Purdy is still streamable, though. Kirk Cousins, anything but underwhelming last week. All right, we all saw what he did. Obviously, not going to do that again, but I think we got to at least look at the fact Cousins keeps getting better every week. And this week, the Carolina Panthers, yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah, he may not throw for 500 yards again, but he could throw for over 300 again against the Panthers. I mean, he's got to be one of the strongest options in this tier.
I mean, I think he's clearly the strongest option among these quarterbacks, but here's one thing I know. Whether it's 500, 400, 300, maybe he doesn't even have a great game, but come on. 230 yards, that's right now where you do the pick'ems on underdog. You see, you can take higher than 230.5 passing yards for Kirk Cousins and win. I'm going to take that pick. If you haven't tried underdog yet, well, you should know that you can do picks like this and you get a new customer special. It's a free pick. Brock Purdy just needs 1 yard. That's right. You go higher on point 0.5 total yards and you can put it together with that Cousins pick. Seems like a freebie basically on both ends to me. But make sure if you do sign up for Underdog for the very first time that you use code NGAME because you get that free pick plus the deposit matchup bonus cash up to $1,000. And I'd like to be in on whoever the Colts quarterback is, except I'm not sure who the Colts quarterback is going to be in week 6.
Yeah, but I think I'm in on whoever it is. Anthony Richardson, I mean, I know it was a small sample, but he was looking pretty good in that first game before he hurt his hip. And Joe Flacco, I mean, look, if Joe Flacco starts, how do you not start Joe Flacco?
I'm definitely going to start Joe Flacco. Again, if I need him, I'm not benching like Joe Burrow for him or anything like that. But man, how many quarterbacks were better in fantasy than Joe Flacco last week? Only a couple. So I really secretly kind of hope it is Joe Flacco again. But either way, you can't be out on Richardson. He still has rushing upside. Don't drop Richardson. If he starts, then he's still definitely a high upside QB, even in a one quarterback league. Before we get to the rest of that quarterback list, and then of course talk about tight ends, don't forget if we're helping you out, help us out, hit the like and subscribe button. We appreciate it. Now, if you don't have one of those QBs we've already discussed, maybe these are your best options if you stream or you just need a replacement this week. Let's start with Trevor Lawrence. Finally, the Jags get a win. Finally, Trevor Lawrence looks like a franchise QB, but does he do it again?
Probably not. That was the Colts. This is the Bears. I would think of the streaming options. Trevor Lawrence this week, who I loved him last week, but this week, probably my least favorite.
I'm with you. Look, you picked T-Law to boom last week. He did. And you're picking him as a bust this week, and so am I. I mean, this is just a complete opposite end of the spectrum in terms of defensive matchups. So you can do better. But what about Caleb Williams on the flip side there? Gets that Jags defense. That seems pretty tempting.
You got to feel good in this matchup, and he's looked good last week, but it is that London game. It can get a little weird, but at the same time, I think the matchup is so good. He's got to be one of my favorite streaming options in this tier.
Right. I'm a little leery here because the last time I went in on Caleb Williams after his big game, his first 300-yard game, he, laid an egg. But again, look at the matchup. It's too good to be true, maybe, but I still like Williams probably better than any of the other streaming options that we're discussing here. And then a guy you really never know what you're getting is Justin Fields. Again, we tried to warn you, don't be in on him too much just because he ran in 2 scores the week before. He didn't do anything on the ground and hardly anything through the air in week 5. But can he do better in week 6?
I mean, maybe it's the Raiders. It's not a terrible matchup. He always has rushing upside, I guess. Again, he's a fine streaming option this week.
Yeah, I feel like he's still the if you need him because your quarterback is hurt or on bye or whatever. Like that's pretty much why I'm streaming Fields if nothing better's out there. Now these are the quarterbacks we say SUPERFLEX 2 QB league. Sure, you can roll with them, but if it's a 1 QB league, no, you've got to be able to do better. So in a SUPERFLEX 2 QB league, these guys are definitely all playable, but let's say you have to dig deep, you have to stream from this list. Who would be your preference?
I think my preference is going to be the bounce back from Andy Dalton in a good matchup against the Falcons. I know last week he was a huge letdown, but that was the Bears. You look at the 2 weeks prior, he was pretty good for fantasy, got you 15 or more fantasy points in each of those games. I think he can bounce back against the Falcons and at least give you a QB2 type of week.
Well, I'll just say based on matchup, I'd like to say Will Levis, but not exactly sure his status. And, he does tend to disappoint. I can't believe I'm saying this. I think I might just go with Daniel Jones if I have to, because Malik Neighbors should be back. The Bengals might force the Giants to air it out a little bit more. Look, I'll just say Daniel Jones has not been that bad this year, so at least you know he has some upside. And let's face it, some QBs just should not be in fantasy lineups, even in a super flex league. These guys should just be avoided. Now it's time for everyone's favorite position, tight end. Got to have one at least, right? Well, there are a couple of guys we still feel are must starts. George Kittle, back and healthy. That's a good thing. Just keep going with him, especially after a 12 target, 8 catch game. Same thing goes for Brock Bowers 12 targets, 8 catches, and that long touchdown. That'll do. Trey McBride, I mean, not a huge game, but I mean, look, it's tight end. I feel like he still at least belongs here.
Yeah, I mean, he gets the targets, he gets the catches. He hasn't had that big game yet, but he's going to score a touchdown eventually. I'd have a hard time benching Trey McBride.
Exactly. I mean, that big game, figure it's got to happen soon. Why not against the Packers? Not a great pass defense. Then, not too far off, we have some tight ends that are solid, and Jake Ferguson has been that ever since coming back. I mean, you know he's just going to be in line for targets, especially with Brandon Cooks out. So you got Ferguson, you keep going with him. Tucker Kraft, I mean, do we even need to justify this? Sure, he might not score 2 touchdowns again, but he's definitely a big part of that Packers offense that does pass a lot. And then let's just hope that they are correct in saying Evan Ingram should be back for week 6. If he plays, I think you just have to play him based on how much they target the Jags. I know you agree with that. Do you agree that David Njoku is a solid start after doing nothing last week? And let's remember also his quarterback is Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, it doesn't give you the warm fuzzies, and it's not a good matchup again against the Eagles here, but at the same time, I mean, how many tight ends do I really feel better about than David Njoku? Like, you got David Njoku, you bite the bullet, you put him in your lineup, you hope.
Yeah, really the only reason he is still here, just to be honest, because once you get down to that next tier we're going to talk about in a minute, the options are not better. So at least you know Njoku is talented. He will get targets. It's tight end. In that same matchup, we're going to have Dallas Goddard for Philly. I mean, he was going off, but we also have to remember that looks like A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith will be back in week 6.
Yeah, that could put a damper on things here, but also, I mean, Goddard has been good. Again, are you going to go to the waiver wire and get a different tight end than Goddard? Probably not. I mean, maybe not my favorite tight end in this tier, but not my least favorite either.
Right. Here's the thing. It's not like we have to drop Goddard all the way down to just a desperation streaming kind of option. It just takes him from he was a must start the last couple of weeks now to just a solid start. He's still solid. Now, last week, Sam Laporta didn't play because of the bye, but I don't think we can just say he's an automatic set and forget, because let's not forget that he was doing a lot of nothing in the first couple of weeks of the season.
Right, and man, Cowboys, they've been pretty tough against tight ends so far. But again, Sam Laporta, like, are you really benching Sam Laporta? I still think he's one of your better options in this tier.
The question I'm going to hate trying to answer is if somebody had Laporta and picked up Kraft, and they're going to ask, who do I pick? I'm not sure if I'm going to say Laporta point blank every single time. I mean, let's see. Laporta is still one of the better tight ends, of course, but man, that might be a tough one. And I really like to say Dalton Kincaid coming off a strong week. He's not. Even with Khalil Shakir out, that whole pass offense was just miserable. Kincaid only 2 catches. Is he really still a strong start?
Again, I know it's been disappointing, but are you just going to go to the waiver wire and grab a different tight end? I mean, like, if you have somebody like Tucker Kraft, I mean, sure, you could maybe consider him over Kincaid, but I think for the most part, Kincaid's a guy you just got to keep rolling with.
Yeah, I really want to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think that lasts another week or two, and then we'll see. With a player like Travis Kelce on bye this week and some tight ends still disappointing, maybe you still are streaming that position. I get it. So these are some options that you might like. Let's break down each one, starting with, well, honestly, Brenton Strange is only streamable if Evan Ingram is out. But if that's the case, which has been the case for a while now, do you feel good enough about Strange?
I mean, you got to. Like, he's involved in this offense. He's got touchdown upside. I think if Ingram's out again, he's one of the stronger streamers.
Agree. But again, only if Ingram is completely out. Sounds like he's trending towards playing, so I'm only going to keep him in case of emergency. Now, what about Cole Kmet? Looks like with all those receivers healthy, Keenan Allen back, he's taken a little bit of a step back, but I think he's at least still streamable.
Yeah, it's not like he's getting nothing. He's getting targets, he's getting catches, and he's one of these guys that like actually picks up yardage with his catches. So definitely a decent streaming option.
I mean, as far as tight ends go, he's still kind of up there based on that one strong week. I like the matchup against the Jags secondary, so he at least does have some upside. I agree with that. Kate Otten there in Tampa Bay, you think he benefits again from the injuries to the number 3, 4 receivers?
I don't know. No, I mean, look, this is a guy like he'll get you something. He's out there. He'll catch passes, but I mean, not a lot of upside here. Probably one of my least favorite streamers.
Agree. And now, of course, the Saints just gave up a bunch of yardage to tight end Travis Kelsey, but look, this is Kate Otten. This is not Travis Kelsey. Otten is pretty much touchdown or bust. Then there's old reliable Zach Ertz was not really reliable last week. What, 10 yards? I mean, still on the radar?
Still on the radar because it's a good matchup against the Ravens. They're not a good pass defense. Again, not the highest ceiling here, but I think he has an okay floor this week.
I said this on the waiver wire video. Look, if you need a streaming tight end, I actually mentioned Zach Ertz. It's probably the best one and a bounce back candidate. I know he did nothing last week, but he still got targets. And again, this is a pass defense. I'm going to go ahead and try to stream against receiver, tight end, whatever. I like Zach Ertz this week. Again, if you're streaming tight end. All right, and here we go. Let's talk Ravens tight ends. Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, now maybe Charlie Kolar too. You got 3 tight ends from the same team who did something for fantasy, and yet Mark Andrews was the 3rd highest scorer on his own team. What do you do with this?
Yeah, I don't really want to do it with either of these guys. I know people are going to be all excited about Likely again, but he had 13 yards and 2 touchdowns on 3 catches. He's probably not doing that again. I think Likely's a trap. I'll say Andrews. I mean, like the Commanders have been good against tight ends. These guys are the bottom of this tier for me.
I don't want to deal with this. And let's just face it, nobody knows exactly how and when these tight ends are going to be used in the pass game. Nobody even knew Charlie Kolar was still on the Ravens. Nah, you can do better. And again, the Commanders, remember that defense has not only been better last couple weeks, but they're actually tough against tight ends specifically. It's not wide receivers. Dalton Schultz still in Houston. I feel like we are only talking about him because Nico Collins might be out, but hey, Nico Collins might be out.
Yeah, if Nico Collins is out, then I think Schultz is a good streaming option this week. Patriots, not that good against tight ends, but only if Nico is out.
Absolutely. But among these other options here, let's see. Strange, only if Ingram is out. Yeah, I think Schultz actually might be one of the stronger streamers this week. Then there's Pat Fryermuth. Steelers, not exactly a prolific pass offense. Where do we put the Muth?
Muth is how he always is for me. He's fine if you got him. I mean, he could score, he could not. He's fine.
Kind of touchdown or bust. I mean, just such a low ceiling in the Steelers offense these days. And did you drop Kyle Pitts last week? Did you just rage bench him? You knew this was coming. All right, so Kyle Pitts, all in or not falling for it?
Somewhere in the middle, only because it's the Panthers this week and I expect Cousins to probably throw for 300 plus yards. Is he going to be as good as last week? Probably not, but he probably won't give you a 0 either, so he's fine.
Fine in a really frustrating, annoying way. I mean, look, the matchup is probably the best out of all these streaming options. Is it really a tight end you like much better? No, probably not. And we have to say, though, as bad as the Jets' offense looked in Week 5 in London, Ty Conklin's numbers actually aren't that bad when you look at him.
Yeah, I mean, he's mostly been solid this year. I think no reason to think he won't be solid again this week. The Bills, you think, ooh, tough pass defense, but they've actually only been decent against tight ends. So, look, maybe Garrett Wilson gets shut down by this secondary and Aaron Rodgers has to throw to Conklin more. I think he's solid.
Look, you got to be encouraged by the target share of the last 3 games. Again, it's never going to be a prolific pass attack here, but again, you're streaming at tight end. Conklin might be one of your best choices. But these tight ends should not be among your choices I mean, we've listed enough guys. You can do better. Don't go with any of these players in week 6. Those are our takes on QB and tight end for week 6. We know we already got you covered at running back and wide receiver as well. Check out those starts videos on this week's playlist.